Hi everyone, welcome to this session. My name is Massimo. I'm an Italian trainer. I work in Microsoft as technical trainer, and I'm also a speaker. In the last 10 years, I provided several sessions in different conferences. But it's not important who I am. The most important thing is I want you to present this feature on the app service, Easy-Auth. As you can understand by the name, Easy-Auth is a way to simplify, to make authentication easy in your app service, and not only. So I start with the typical posture of a developer when you ask him or her to implement authentication or managing authentication in your solution. Just because for developer the authentication process, the authentication implementation is a complex, time-consuming task, because it needs a lot of knowledge about different protocols. I know that everyone that works in this world need to know these things, these topics about authentication. But I'm a developer. Trust me, it's very difficult to know every single protocol, not just because the protocol is difficult, but because when you implement authentication, you manage sensitive information, like passwords, access tokens, and so on. And you need to have a high level of expertise. Otherwise, if you have an error, so if you make an error, you can have a breach, a security breach, and data leaks. So if you miss to put the right button in your interface, is not a problem. But if you lose or someone can take the token access, token endpoint, or password of your user, you have some very big problem. So authentication for the developer is very difficult to implement. And just to recap, what is the flow of OAuth authentication? This flow is very easy in this slide. I just want to emphasize what is the part of this flow in which the developer need to put their hands. So first of all, your user ask for the home page or ask for an authenticated resource, maybe an home page, but also maybe an endpoint, a REST endpoint is not important. And because the request doesn't contain a valid token or contains a token that is expired, this request will be redirected to the identity provider. I will show you what kind of identity provider you can use in Easy-Auth, but just in general, this request arrive to the identity provider, and the user make login using username, password, multi-factor authenticator, as you prefer, as you configure in the identity provider. Then there is another interaction between the user and the identity provider. I mean, when I talk about the user, I'm talking about the front-end part of your application, not necessarily the user. The number 3 is the call that arrives from the front end to the identity provider, giving the authorization token to receive the access token. The access token is the most important thing, because using the access token, finally, your user can retrieve the home page or the resource that are authenticated. There is another thing you need to do. Frequently, you need to refresh the token, because the token, as all the token, has an expiration time. When the expiration time is reached, the token is not valid. So the next request to the home page or to the resource that is authenticated is like the first one. So the user will be redirected to the login and so on. So a refresh token is one of the most important things, and also is not in this graph, but you need to store this token in a session related to the user and this session must be secure. All this part is more or less developer responsibility. You have a lot of framework that help you. Easy-Auth is not the only way you can implement all this part. You have a lot of framework. I will show you in the final part of this session. Yeah, but you need to manage all these things. So it's this is the reason why these tasks are very difficult for a developer, because yeah, you can imagine that if I miss something, someone can take the access token for the user. What is Easy-Auth? As you can understand by the name, Easy-Auth is a built-in capability feature in App Service, Azure App Service. So we are talking about Azure App Service, and the idea is to simplify the authentication, so you can implement all the flow I mentioned before without writing code, or with minimal code. I will show you in a while. And not only in App Service, but also in App Service, Azure Function, and Container Apps. So you can use in a different scenario. Of course, if your code, if your front end, I don't know, you write a front end in Angular, I don't know, already implement all the authentication, probably this is not the right session. You have all your all you need to make the authentication. But there are some scenarios I will show you in a while in which you have a solution, you need to authenticate the solution, but you don't want or you cannot write code. So in that way, if you go to Azure App Service, you can leverage Easy-Auth feature. Why? Because Easy-Auth allow you to integrate a lot of auth capabilities. So, for example, you can have a front end that call an API. So the passing the token. So making an approach on behalf of between the front end and the API is something you have built in Easy-Auth. So it's very easy. Second, you don't need any language. You don't need any expertise. You don't need, I know that it's better that you have expertise, but you don't need security expertise or SDK or something external to write your authentication. You just simply configure. I will show you in a demo. And also you have multiple login providers, identity providers, Microsoft Entra ID, Facebook, Google, Twitter, GitHub, and also every OpenID Connect authentication. Okay, so it's very, very easy. As you can understand, it's not for every solution, because we will recap at the end. This is on Azure. This is only App Service, Azure Function, and Container Apps. And also, it's helpful if you don't have an implementation by yourself. But probably you have some scenarios in which you can leverage. This is the architecture. When you create your app service, you know, and if you don't know, I will tell you now. You know, you have the app service in Azure that hosts your code and expose the listener. So this listener here, let me go there. The listener here is exposed by the app service, but your code will run in VMs that are in the app service plan service in Azure. When you configure this out, the platform put a middleware between your code and the listener. So every request arrived from the listener, so from the outside your application, will through the apps, the Easy-Auth middleware, and arrive to your code. And this Easy-Auth middleware manage for you all the things related to the auth. So redirect the request, checking the token first of all, then redirect the request to the identity provider, the right identity provider, then manage the token store if you want. You can configure a token store managed by the app service and refresh the token when it needs. So it's something that will be for you by the platform. So just to clear, this is what the middleware does. Authenticate user and clients just because you can use for a front end, but also for API. So users mean a user arrive on your page and your page is an app service, or a client call your API and your API is an app service. Okay. Validate, store, and refresh OAuth tokens. Okay. And manage authenticated sessions. So it means for each user, unique user, you have an authenticated session managed by the middleware for you. And then your code will receive information about identity because the middleware inject this information in the headers of the request. I will show in a while. Before we go to the demos and to the way this middleware implement the injection of the security information, just to have there is a difference if you work on an app service plan based on Windows or if you work on an app service plan based on Linux and container. Because just to be clear, you can use this feature also for containers. So it's not mandatory that you deploy a code, your code in, I don't know, Java or Node.js. It works also for container. If you're using an app service plan based on Windows, the middleware run in IIS in the same sandbox of your application. And every request go through this middleware and arrive to your application. And as usual, as I said you before, information will be added to the request as headers. If you work in Linux or a container, you don't have a native module because you don't have AIS behind the scene. The platform run this middleware in a separate container, isolated from your application, and use the ambassador pattern. When you receive the slide, or if you want, you can search. This link will drive you to the ambassador pattern page in the architecture in the Azure architectural portal. Because is not in the same process, the disadvantage of this approach, because it is not running in the same process or your application. You don't have a direct integration with your application, but as happened in the Windows, you receive information, the identity information in the headers. Claim the code. As I said, the request arrive to the middleware. The middleware manages for you all the security stuff with the identity providers, and then inject the claim, inject identity information into the request headers. And as this request arrive to your code. So if you want, you can care about the identity. So for example, you want to write in the name of the user, or for example, show the image, the avatar the user have as in GitHub. I don't know. I will show you in a while, because you can take this information from the headers. Nobody can set this kind of header outside the app service. So if you try to make a request and put the header, the same header that the middleware set for you, the middleware will remove all this kind of this kind of headers. So you cannot inject from outside. It's very important, because otherwise you have a breach. Okay. Basically, you have 4 headers. I will show in a while. That depends on the provider you use. You have more than 4, but basically for all the providers you have 4 headers. XMS client principal contains the token. Basically, I will show you in a while. Principal ID obtain the identifier for the caller. So the ID in the platform, in the identity provider. The name is a human readable, so you have the ID for the user and the name. Depends on the platform, depends on the identity provider what you have in the name. Sometimes you have name and surname. In other platform you have the email. Depends. And the IDP, the principal IDP, is the name of the identity provider. Because remember, you can have more than one identity in the same app service. So you can have a solution that allows the user to log in with the Entra ID, Google, and GitHub. Okay, so you know what kind of identity provider is used by the user. Okay. Token store you can enable. It's just a check in the configuration. You can enable the token store. It allows you to manage the collection of the token for the user in a safe authenticated session and refresh the token for you. Okay. It's a built-in store, so it is no matter what kind of storage is. This one you can manage by yourself. If you enable it, the platform manages for you. And of course, only the user can read its data. The session for the user is safely saved in the storage. How you can read? You can read all information. Just simply make a request to this endpoint. So if you are in your site /.auth/me allow you to retrieve the information about the token. So it is something that the platform manages for you, but if you need to know more information about the user, you need to retrieve all the information in your code if you want about all the claims you have in the authentication process, you can do making a request on this endpoint. It's not a public endpoint, of course, otherwise it's a problem. It's an internal endpoint that App Service exposes for you. So you can, I will show you in a while. Some scenarios, let me drink water. When use Easy-Auth, I don't want to write code to manage authentication. Example, I have a lot of demos in Azure for my technical sessions, and these sessions are about different topics respect to the security. So, for example, a demo is about a solution to add a feedback from a user and analyze the sentiment of this feedback and write in a Cosmos. When I run in my machine, there is no problem about security because I am the only one that I can run F5 in Visual Studio. If I put on Azure, I don't want to implement security because it is not a demo about security. So I put in App Service and configure the Easy-Auth. In this way, just only the people that I want to give the access to the application can use the application, but not the other. Otherwise, it is a public solution, and then everyone can try and use my service, right? Maybe one scenario. Second one, I'm using a language or SDK that doesn't provide sign-in or authorization part. It's not the most important SDKs and languages support sign-in authorization, but if you have, I don't know, classic ASP, for example, maybe a good idea. You cannot change your app. If you cannot change your app and you want to, for example, if you have a legacy app in on-prem and you want to secure the app, you can use the Easy-Auth. If you want just handling authentication using configuration and you don't want to put the code, maybe another one. And finally, if you want to use social user external, not Enter ID, because in Enter ID is easy because you can configure, you can have other SDKs, but external social user, it's or multiple providers, maybe another scenario. Just to be clear, imagine you have legacy app, just a scenario about legacy app. Imagine you have on-prem web server in which you running an application, and imagine this web server is based on IIS, and your application is using the IIS, the Windows authentication. So it means you have users in Active Directory domain service and say, hey, I want that this kind of user can join, can enter, can log in the solution. Now I want to move this solution, this application in cloud, in Azure. How can I do? First of all, I can synchronize the user in Enter ID. There is an Enter ID connector. It is you have a couple of these. You can synchronize part of your users in Enter ID, so they become users in both the worlds. Then you can move your app service. Imagine it is a Java, Spring, Java application. You can move in the app service, but your application in your code has not the capability to make to implement the authentication, because you don't need on-prem. On-prem you can leverage the Windows authentication on IIS, for example. Then your user on Enter ID, your application is on app service, so you can say, hey, I want to use the users in my Enter ID in this application. And then finally, you can remove from your on-prem world. We can go to the demo. Okay, first one, I go to the, come on here. Simple site. I want to configure Easy-Auth. Just to be sure, let me copy this one. I open another site in navigation, in private navigation. It is open because probably I received. Okay, this is open because it didn't request me any login, just to be clear. Then go here. You can find the configuration in this option. Go to the authentication, add identity provider. Here you can have Microsoft, Enter ID, Apple, Facebook, GitHub, Google, Twitter, with the old logo, but it's okay. And also OpenID Connect. So if you have your OpenID Connect service in, I don't know, whatever you want, you can use it. Let me use Google just to make it different. When you use when you use an external provider, not an Enter ID, you need to create an application, an app registration, an application in the source platform. So you need to go to the developer, Google Developer Platform and the Google Developer Console, create a new app registration. And when you create the app registration, Google gives to you a couple of ID, and client ID and secret. Let me put this one and then this other one. Perfect. Then you need to choose what you want to do. So required authentication means every page of your website needs login. Allow unauthenticated access means it's up to you. Redirect, making a redirect inside your code that to start authentication. So it means you have a part of your website that don't need authentication. This part is interesting because if you are on a website, probably you want to have an HTTP 302. So it means that the user arrived on your page, the user doesn't have the token, it will be redirected to the identity provider. But if you have an API, it's not the same. If you have an API and a client make a request without token, you need to return HTTP 401. Or if you want to retard this kind of status. No, depends on the scenario you have. So it means you can use in a website with the UI, you can use an API, you can use in different scenarios. Then okay, I choose Google. It's okay, and I enable the token store. If I want, I can remove, but if I make the call to the endpoint I show you in the slides, you don't receive anything. I don't know if you receive an error or not, but you cannot receive the claim just because you don't have the claim. You don't have the token store. It's something you need to manage by yourself if you want. I think it's okay because now the scopes means what you read of your user when the user make logins is something you cannot configure here. You need to configure to Google in this case. This scopes is valid only if you use Entra ID, because Entra ID is an app registration managed by Entra ID. Okay. I don't remember what kind of scopes I use, but probably only the name and the email. As you can see here, you can add other provider if you want. The same, add provider, choose provider, set up the information, and that's all. The most important thing is I go there, I copy the link, the URL, the fully qualified domain name. I open a new private Windows. And then I take the phone because I need to make multi-factor. This is the login. As you can see here, this is the login in Google. So I am redirecting to Google, so it's okay. It's natural because it is what I configured. Come on, password, and then let me go and here. Wait for a moment, just to show you that it works. 3, 2, 1. Yes, I'm the right one. That's all. That's all. Okay, you can see here. I am Massimo Bonanni. I am authenticated, and also here you can see the header. So you have all the standard headers, and so here, principal name, my name, principal ID, the internal ID for the user, the IDP is Google, okay, and this is the token. You can trust me, but I know you don't trust me. Control C, I open this one. I suppose you know jvt.io. I put the token here, and this is Google. You can see, for example, the email. You can see, for example, the picture. If I copy this one in a new page, you can see my beautiful face and so on. So you have all the information. This is a real token, so you can extract data from there. Another demo. Let me close this one and go to the other one. Yes, this one. I already configured here the authentication. Let me show you what I used. In this case, I used Microsoft. So I use the Entra ID. Okay. I don't remember, probably I use the only Microsoft account. You can choose when you use the Microsoft, you can choose if you want a Microsoft account or other, but I use only Microsoft account. And before I run, I open the code. I write some 3 samples. You can find in the slide, you can find the link to the GitHub repo. And in this one, I create where is this one? I create a middleware by myself. When I receive a request, I make the request to the .out/me to retrieve all the information, and I create an identity to put in the context of the request. This is ASP.NET core, the latest. This means that if I'm using all the feature of the ASP.NET regarding the identity, when my request arrives to the backend, the identity will be full, will be empty, will be completed. So you have an identity. So you can manage, for example, the authentication attribute and so on. You can see the code. It's just simple. I make the request, I retrieve information from the JSON, and I create a new identity, and then I put in the context. It's very, very easy. Okay. If you want, you can use this middleware. It's very easy. It's not so difficult to implement. I want to show you what's happened. I go there. I copy the link. Come on, Massimo, you can do it. I copy this one. I open a new private. Okay. Now probably I will redirect to Enter ID, as you can see on top. It's login microsoft.com. Now I need to remember my, okay, this one. This is my personal account. Yes, and notification, multi-factor, it's good thing. Yeah, 58. Come on. Okay. It's okay. It's the same. The result is the same. Records detail, but also here you can find the claim I put in the identity. I read these claims directly from the JSON that the platform retrieved from the identity provider for me and store in the token store. For example, the mail, the name, and no other things, just because for the scope, I just choose to have the name and the username. If you try to do the same, for example, with GitHub, I will show in a while, you also have the avatar, you have the repositories, the public repositories of the user, and so on. The third demo is about multi-provider. So I go there. I copy this link. Come on. Again, I open a new in private. Now I enter on the page and I show the page. So it means that the page is not authenticated, because otherwise the pages will redirect me to the login. Now I can choose, for example, I can choose to log in with GitHub. I put the name. Probably I need to verify. Sorry again, but it's the right thing. Okay, 772-802. Okay, user info. The same, exactly the same. And here you can see, for example, the followers, the following URL, the guests, and the avatar, and so on. So it depends on the platform you are using. Okay. These use the same approach I show you in the second demo, but here I would like to show you how you can implement multi-provider. In my page, home page, this one, I just put this link. If I redirect, if I use this link, so this is an internal endpoint provided by the app service, I want to authenticate with ID, so Enter ID. This is, I want to, of course, if I configure the right provider, I want to log in with Google, I want to log in with GitHub, and so on. I can put also the redirect URL. So I can say, hey, go to the identity provider, and when the provider, the user will be authenticated, show the other pages. So this is the way you can do it. Simply redirect to an internal endpoint, just the same. The only thing is changing is this one, and this one, and then the middleware redirect to the right endpoint. Okay. Okay, go ahead. A couple of things and we close. You can manage this configuration by bicep or acyclic. So you can automatize the creation of this identity, of this configuration. And then what you can choose if you want to implement authentication. You can use the built-in authentication, very easy, managed by the platform. I will show in a while what are the limitations you have. That's all. You also have authentication, Microsoft Authentication Library. It is used by the middleware. If you use this Microsoft Authentication Library, you need to write the code, of course, because you have an SDK for several languages that allow you to interact with the providers. It is also a multi-provider, so you can use Entra-ID, Facebook, Google, and Twitter. If you are working on ASP.NET, so you are in the .NET world, you can use that package. Microsoft Identity Web is something are created on top of Microsoft Authentication Library, give you some other feature like controls you can put in the page and so on. But yeah, the second and the third needs you need to use the second and the third if you want to write code. The first one is just configuration. Pros and cons. Pros, very, very easy. So if you have just add an authentication process, it's very easy. Support for multiple identity providers and virtually for any OpenID Connect providers, even if you have an internal on-prem identity provider you expose, you can interact with the app service just because OpenID is OpenID, is a standard. The integration with the app service, the Azure service is easy. So the app service, what I mentioned in the app service is exactly the same if you use Azure Function or if you use container apps. It's just a configuration. And the middleware is the same. Enhanced security, because in some scenario you don't have security on the beginning. In my demo, I don't put security, not because I'm not able, probably yes, I'm a developer, so I'm not able, but just because my demos is not for that kind of topic, it's for something different. But when I put on Azure, because I want to show to my attendees, I want to put to make them secure. I don't want to spend my money because someone else can use the authentication, the application. So I take my application and say, hey, put the Entra-ID only for a user in my domain, in my tenant. So it's very, very easy. It's yeah, perfect. Cons, limited customization. The only thing you can do is say, I want to have all my website authenticated or not, or some part. I want to redirect or return HTTP 401. You cannot do anything different. Of course, depend on Azure. You can use in Azure App Service, in Azure Function App, or Azure Container apps. You cannot use on-prem. This is something you have a problem you can have during a test, because you need to create your own middleware to inject in when you make tests on your machine to inject the right or fake security headers just to test. Okay, it depends on Azure, so it is a great limitation. And also because depends on Azure, maybe a vendor lock-in because it works only on Azure. Okay, makes sense. So we have 5 minutes. So if you have any question, first of all, you can find in this slide my my references, the mail on LinkedIn. If you want, we can join in LinkedIn. If you have any question, you can put on the chat, and if I have answer, I will answer to you. I don't see any question. While people think, you will find also this reference in the slide. The slide contains the sample. This is my repository with the sample, and also the documentation for scenarios, and the app service and Azure function, and the user authentication authorization means the way you can log in directly using the internal login endpoint. So thank you for the session. If you have any question after the session, you can send me in email or using LinkedIn. I appreciate your patience. See you next time. I have a question, probably. Let me check. No question. So have a good day. See you next time. Bye-bye.